Welcome to the roller coaster of midlife. I'm your host, Lucy Q. Today, we are honored to welcome a guest whose work delves deep into the intricate dance of the body, mind, and spirit. With a clinical doctorate in physical therapy, Dr. Alice Kerby's expertise doesn't just stop at understanding movement. She's deeply versed in the interplay of the nervous system and how it holds on to past traumas and chronic stress. Her method, somatic experiencing trauma therapy, has been instrumental in helping countless individuals touch gently into these deeply ingrained patterns and rediscover a sense of resilience. Welcome, Dr. Alice.
Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, the concept that our trauma and stress can create physical pain or ailment in our body is still a relatively new concept to people because we've been guided for so long to believe that any aches or pains that we may have in our body, any illness, is because of something else. And some of our guests may not be fully aware of how our body actually reacts to these things. So, can you maybe share with us how our nervous system actually holds on to some of these past traumas?
Sure, I will do my best to give a summary. So, what can happen a lot of times in when there's a traumatic event or a perceived traumatic event? So, if our subconscious or our lower brain structure thinks that something's traumatic, for example, if we're a kid walking to school and there's a big dog in a yard close by and the dog runs up to the fence and starts barking at us, we may not be any, actual danger, but we'll perceive that as a threat. And our body will go through this threat response cycle process. And it can be imprinted on us as a traumatic event because we perceived it as a traumatic event. Um, and so, trauma can encompass a wide variety of events from things like that to, of course, PTSD. There's a lot of us have various types of trauma. I'll leave it at that. And so what happens in our body and with our nervous system is a lot of times we'll go into these survival responses. So we'll go into, a fight or flight response, a freeze response. So there's certainly other responses, a fawn and a appease response. But what can happen is we may not actually get to slow down and do what our body wants to do in the moment. So, for example, in that event, maybe when that dog runs up to the fence, the child really internally has this response of like wanting to scream, to yell at the dog, or to run away. But maybe they're like trapped and frozen, or maybe their mom is holding their hand, so they can't really follow through with that impulse to run. And so that energy, like the energy that gets stored up as the trauma, will actually get stuck. And so with work like somatic experiencing, we help to work with the physiology to actually not necessarily relive the event at all. Like a lot of times we don't even work with content, but we work with what's happening in the body and what are the impulses of the body. And can we allow the body to do some of these things that it didn't get to do in the time of the event because it wasn't safe? And so in doing that, we can actually free up a lot of space and people can start to create new patterns that aren't necessarily the same. Like every time I see a dog, I need to cross the street, for example. And so now they can maybe see a dog and notice, oh, I have some activation or I have a little bit of tightness in my chest, but I can also stay here and I can look at the dog. And so we really work slowly with allowing the system to have a new perspective on the event that was reminds them of the original trauma.
And I mean, let's face it, we all have some form of trauma that we've experienced. I don't think you can make it through this life
Yeah.
without, in some capacity, having dealt with trauma or experienced trauma. The dealing with it is a whole other story, because so often we do that. You push it down, you ignore it, you don't want to deal with it. But at some point in time, it comes out in your body.
Yeah. And a lot of times what I see happening is it hasn't been safe to actually be in our bodies. It hasn't been safe for a lot of people to really be present. And so, because of for good reason, right? Because maybe it wasn't safe during these traumatic events. And so it's like we push away or we, like you were saying, try to ignore. We don't want to feel when we get some of these physiological symptoms, when we have that tightness in our chest, or there's a dark pit feeling in our stomach. It's like we want to get away from that as fast as possible. We don't want to go into it and explore it. But if we can start to come into our bodies and to even just to gently touch into those, with the help of a practitioner, particularly if it's really a big event, that's where we can start creating change. And then otherwise, yes, sometimes it will start to come out in the body as pain, autoimmune diseases, things like that can happen, or can at least be, correlated with traumatic history, with chronic stress. That's something I work with a lot, is this high alert pattern we see a lot of in the Western world, where we're running on level 10 all the time, where we don't know how to rest. I think it's a really big problem that we don't address, is this lack of an ability to really rest, like physiologically, to settle into our bodies and just feel at ease. And so, that takes a toll too. We know there's a lot of bad physical effects from chronic stress. It's highly documented in the research.
And you mentioned autoimmune diseases. I am surprised by how many, midlife women that are coming up with these mysterious illnesses and ailments that their doctors have no clue what's going on, and they can offer no relief from it.
Yeah.
Anything from, odd patches on the skin. I know one person that gets these really weird blistering on her skin for no reason. And her doctor basically said, it's autoimmune. I don't
Yeah,
know what
which
to
is
do.
Yeah, and I think it is a problem. And when we're talking about middle age too, we're also, on the terrain of perimenopause and menopause, and how much of these symptoms are related to hormonal changes.
Yeah.
And again, that's why I love your podcast and in this topic, because we need to bring this conversation into the forefront. I interviewed a woman on Monday who's a nutritionist, and she works a lot with menopausal women and perimenopause, and it was so great. It's just, I love having these conversations, because I think the more education that's out there, it gives women another place to look, because they're not getting answers from their physicians.
No, and that's why it's so important to normalize these conversations. And,
Absolutely.
in all fairness to our current physicians, they're not trained
Yeah.
to investigate things like this. They're trained to deal with immediate trauma,
Mhm.
accidents, breakages, gashing wounds. And unfortunately, they're trained to identify a symptom and prescribe something for it.
Yeah.
And if you don't fit into any of those patterns, they don't know which way to turn. And it's not their fault. It's not their fault. We're expecting something from them that they simply haven't been equipped with.
Yeah, and I think women's health in general is still a relatively new field. And when we look
I
at
know.
like,
It makes me laugh. It's like, did we just suddenly drop onto this planet? I mean, we have been around
I
here for a while.
right, it's 50% of the population. But when you look at research studies, so much of the research on different, medical conditions, ailments, how just a large body of research is conducted on men or on women who aren't like in a menstruating the menstruating ages. And I don't know this for sure, so don't quote me on this, but I don't think there's a very large body of research about perimenopause and menopausal women
There's not.
yet.
There's
Yeah,
not. There
which
has
is
been,
shocking. It's
I know
shocking.
there's been a little bit of research, but not a whole lot. I did interview somebody that was sort of deep into that had investigated the healthcare system and the healthcare world. And she basically shared that when it comes to research, most of the research dollars goes to non-women based problems,
Hmm.
and most of the research dollars don't actually go to female researchers. So basically, female researchers that are more likely to research female issues are getting next to nothing
Mm,
for their causes. So there is definitely a lag in the system. And you're right in saying that most of the research is actually done on young, healthy males.
yeah, yeah, which tells us a lot about that particular population. But I mean, our cycles are so different, our hormones are so different, at different phases in our lives. It's like the more we can have an understanding of what's going on, it leads to greater empowerment. So I'm glad we're talking about it. I'm glad there are things out there like the Dutch test. I know
That's the
that's
saliva test, isn't it?
I don't remember.
I think it's
I'm just learning about it. Saliva. I know it measures like hormone levels.
Yeah, I think it's a saliva test you do over 7 days. I think it is.
And I know they've got, I think, good research on their site and their YouTube. I've been directed there as a point of furthering my own research. So I'm happy to just pass that on. It's still new to me. And so I'm like, I don't
Yeah.
really know exactly what it is, but I think
It's not a cheap test.
I think it's a few $100s.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah.
it's certainly not covered by any healthcare here in
No.
Canada. Probably
Yeah.
not.
Or in the
No,
US. No. Yeah. Come
no.
on. Like,
Yeah, good luck with
I know,
that.
and the fact that it's almost like I'm sort of scoffing at that, like the fact that it would be covered, I mean, that's sort of ridiculous. We can't get these tests to tell us where we are hormonally so that we know how to actually treat ourselves. I mean,
I
that's
actually had a
frustrating.
conversation with a friend the other day, and I said that as women, as soon as we begin menstruating, we should have a hormone profile done.
Hmm.
Every year we go to the doctors and they test our cholesterol and they test whatever vitamins and they test whatever they want. But they never look at our hormones.
Yeah, which is
And it's
shocking.
like, wouldn't you get a baseline just to
Yeah.
understand? But the funniest thing is I got blood work done for my hormones, and I requested the actual copy of it because I wanted to know. I wanted to understand what these numbers meant. And I found out that on your lab report, where it gives you like the normal range,
Hmm.
it's the average of the people that they've tested.
Oh.
It's not, they explained it to me and they're like, no, it's not actually against, this is ideally where you should be.
Hmm.
Normal is considered, are you like everybody else they've tested?
Wow.
And I'm like, well, what happens if your test pool is shit?
Yeah, I mean, that just seems like bad science.
I know.
Like, what are
and
we
that's
doing here?
why and that's why I think it's important that as women we don't rely on our doctors and we do our own research, because all of us are as our experience with midlife hormones is as unique as our experience has been throughout our entire life through menstruation, whether you had bad cramps, whether you didn't, if you were
Mhm.
3 days or 7 days, how easily you got pregnant. All of these things matter. And that's why we need to take charge and look for alternative therapies to help us in our healing journeys, because our doctors don't have the answers. And we
Yeah,
have to become our best health advocates.
we do. We do. I really encourage that for all of my patients and for women, particularly at this age. The more I learn about how perimenopause can affect women, like again, very differently, like you said, but I mean, it's pretty intense for a lot of women. And a lot of
Yep.
times, I think one of the biggest problems is they don't know what's going on when these symptoms start. So I think having at least an awareness of, oh, this can happen, in your early 40s, it could happen later. But if you're experiencing some of these things, like this is the time, if you haven't yet, get your hormones tested, find out what's going on, be your own health advocate, do some of your own research, because I think otherwise, like the downward spiral without knowing what's going on is so scary and frustrating. And I would just love to help less women have to go through that.
Well, that's exactly what I went through. When I look back, my hormones started changing in my late 30s.
Mm,
And that's what they don't tell us. First of all, I didn't learn the word perimenopause until I think 3 years ago. I think it's when I first came across it. Um, our hormones can start changing as early as our late 30s. And the time from when you initially start perimenopause until you're considered menopausal, it could be up to 10 years.
yeah.
I'm pretty much 10 years.
Hmm.
And 10 years is a long time to go feeling that your body is completely messed up and it's just not who you are.
Yeah. It's a very long time. And I think there's a statistic that there's higher suicide rates in women like during these age periods, like
It is
mid
the
40s to like I think mid 50s.
yeah, the highest age range, the average age range if women are going to commit suicide, it's midlife.
Yeah.
And that's why we're here to have these conversations, is to let women know that they're not alone
Yeah.
and that there are different options out there. Yes, you do have to take care of your own health and you have to do your own research and look into different practices. But there are answers out there and there are solutions out there.
Definitely, definitely. And there are practices that can help. And I like the somatic experiencing work that I do. I just taught a retreat this past weekend and it was all not all, it was a lot of sort of women in middle age. And so we talked about these things. It was great because it turned out it was just all women. And so we had a lot of these really frank and open conversations. And a lot of people came to this retreat because they were looking specifically for ways to regulate their nervous system, which I was like, great, that's exactly what I do. But I didn't know like that was in the common vernacular where people were actually searching for that. Because, and I hear this a lot from my clients and I work a lot with women. I work with men too, but primarily women, where it's like I'm constantly like stressed, fatigued. I'm snappy with my family. And I just want ways, like I was saying before, to like find a bit of peace, to find ways to regulate my internal realm. And so I think adding this component with some of these nervous system regulation tools, like starting to work with the autonomic nervous system and bringing our bodies into the conversation in a different way where we're really feeling from the inside out. I think in addition to let's see what's going on with your hormones, let's like figure out what's happening in ways to address that through nutrition, through, different health practices, getting outside in nature. Like we found there's just huge
Grounding.
benefits. Yeah, grounding, doing some forest bathing, earthing, I think is another one. But I mean, just go outside and be around some nature. Really, it's
Yeah.
it's pretty simple. But it's got great. I mean, again, there's a lot of research on this. A lot of it came out of Japan from the early 80s when the whole forest bathing movement started over there, where they found it's good for your immune system. You actually get an immune boost from spending, I think, 15 to 20 minutes in a forested area. So things like that. So it's kind of a long tangent, but that's how I look at working with people and with women who are in middle age. Like, can we help to calm your system? Because you've probably been running on high alert for the past 20 years, especially if you're raising kids and you're probably having a career or you're doing, women do so much. Um, and it's like I don't think we get I see a lot of women that don't really give themselves a break or time to rest. And then even deeper than that, there isn't an ability within their systems to actually come into rest. And I think that's where a big part of my work comes in is like, can we teach your system that it's safe to rest, that it's okay to rest? And
Do you
that's
have maybe
profound.
do you have maybe three simple steps that somebody could take just to start to calm their systems?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think nature is a big one. If you live in a place where you can go out into nature, and there's a practice, this we can kind of tie these together. It can be a separate one, something called orienting. And so this is a somatic experiencing tool, and we can do it together as we're talking. For anyone who's listening, as long as you're not driving, you can do this along with us. Um, but really, just let your eyes roam around the space that you're in. And I'm looking outside of my office here. There's some palm trees but see if you can let things come into your field of vision rather than trying to seek them out. And let your eyes be drawn to whatever they're naturally drawn to. And just linger on anything they find pleasant. And really take your time with this. And this can be a helpful practice to do anytime you walk into a new room. It can be helpful to do when you're outside, if you are in nature. Notice the bark on the tree, the little birds, but really give yourself time to land in the space that you're in. And you can orient, of course, through your other senses as well. Just our visual sense is so powerful. And it what that does is it really lets our body and our nervous systems know, like, okay, I'm here, I'm in the here and now, and it's okay, like I'm okay. And so it helps to to down regulate. So if we're like way up here on some activation or high stress level, it does help us to come down for a lot of people. Not everyone loves orienting, but it's a useful tool for a lot of people. So that's one. Nature is one. And then let's see, let me come up with another one. There's quite a few. I've been working a lot with this practice lately of working from the periphery, from the outside in. So, and this is again, a SE technique. Dr. Peter Levine, I think, first came up with this, but I really like it, of where you can tap your hand, squeeze your hand, and just look at it and say, this is my hand. This is my body. This is my hand. My hand belongs to me. And to really take time, and you can go through your whole body like this, gently squeezing and tapping. And it helps us to recognize, like, wow, like this is my body. I'm in here. And again, that can be down regulating. It can be really powerful for some people. You know, I've done this a lot, and sometimes I'm even like, whoa, you know, this is my arm. So it can be really profound, and it seems simple, but a lot of these tools are simple, and we want to work with our systems, especially if we've been through trauma or if we've been living on high alert for a long time. It's we work with this idea of titration, of moving slowly, of touching into the things that are difficult. One more thing that I will say that can work as a tool is to notice when you do feel good, when you feel okay, when you feel calm, happy, empowered, anything that's more towards that pleasant spectrum. Notice what's going on in your body with those things and really take time with it, you know, savor it like it's the last sip of a chocolate shake or something that you really enjoy. Like, take time to savor the goodness and let it land in your body. And so notice sensations, you know, notice maybe there's an openness in your chest, or I feel really, you know, grounded or solid in the chair. But starting to notice when we do feel more down regulated, calm, more like ourselves, that also teaches our system that we can have more of that. So even if it's just for a tiny moment. I worked with a woman once who had just chronic, really intense depression. And it was this big win. One day she told me, she's like, I felt a second of joy. I felt it just for a second. And it was a big deal to just be like, wow, like you felt that and you noticed it. And so, you know, just little bits at a time. And if joy feels just way out of the realm, notice when you feel kind of okay, you know?
One thing that, and it's, it seems like such an old person thing to say, but I, I get bird feeders. And
Yeah.
I like just to watch the birds and how they interact and how they fly and notice their wings, and especially when it's
Hmm.
hummingbird season, because you can hear them coming at you before you actually see them at the feeder. They're amazing to watch. And I can
Yeah.
just sit there just watching the birds. And like you
Yeah.
say, it's that orientating and just being in nature and just being and being
Hmm.
okay with being, because I think that's part of it. You're saying how busy we are, and there's a certain amount of guilt associated, especially for women and mothers, that if you just take that moment just to sit and be, or sit and read a
Hmm.
book, that somehow you're being lazy.
Yeah. It's a big problem. I'm realizing more and more this lack of an ability to rest, to truly rest. Yeah,
It's
because there's guilt
yeah,
associated with it, or shame, or we're such a productivity based culture, and it's bullshit. Like,
yeah.
we got to get out of it. You know, we can still be productive and we can learn how to rest.
Well, I think that we would be more productive.
We are more
You know,
productive when
I
we're
think even
rested.
you look at our, prescribed 8-hour workday, where you're expected to sit at a desk and perform for a
So
set amount of
stupid.
time. And I can't help but think that, well, first of all, 8 hours is too long because physically it's not healthy.
Yeah.
I'm sure people would get just as much done in 5 hours as they would
People
8.
do. I mean, I think they found out people do, and like during COVID when people were working from home, and some people are more productive in the morning. They want to get up and work
Yeah.
6 to 10 and take a break and come, maybe they get another surge at night. It's
Yeah,
stupid.
I know it doesn't make sense because we're forcing everyone to sort of fit into the same mold, and we're not. We each work in different ways. And I think
Yeah.
it's important that we do take the time to step back and understand, how are we at our best. Like you said, some people are better in the morning, some people are better in the afternoon. I get my best work done in the morning.
Me too.
By the time I get to 2, 3 in the afternoon,
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, that's good for the day. I'm
Hmm.
good. Time to
Yeah.
go and
And
time to go and sit and watch my birds.
I'm the same. Afternoon, I'm like, I'm gonna walk down to the beach or I'll do something physical. But yeah, my brain
Just
is just
be.
best in the morning.
Yeah.
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 And
And I
it's
think that's important for us
helpful
and
to know.
our healing journeys is
Yeah.
just to learn that about ourselves, gift that to ourselves.
And trust it. And
Yeah.
try to follow it and learn. I think it's helpful too. I just started learning about like what happens in the different phases of our menstrual cycles for anyone who is still, having cycles. And it's like, wow, there are times in the month when I'm just going to be more productive. I'm going to have more energy. I'm going to be better at interviews. And there's times when I should probably schedule less.
Yes,
Um,
yes, I have. I've heard that. Unfortunately, I learned about that when my cycle was already on the decline, so it kind of didn't make much difference.
yeah,
My hormones were already a shit show at that point in time.
yeah. Then it's like this whole new ball game of figuring out, yeah, the perimenopausal hormones, and
Uh,
because it's not so cyclical, it's much harder.
yeah, it's a circus. It's not cyclical.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. Um,
It
I'm a little
is.
scared. I'm scared. That's why
No,
I'm,
if you know,
yeah, I
then you're
think it'll be
prepared.
better.
You're
Yep, that's
prepared.
what.
It's for us women, Gen X women. It wasn't talked about. Sure, you go to
Hmm.
health class, you learn about getting your period, you learn about getting pregnant.
Yeah,
Our mothers were not of a generation where they spoke about this.
yeah, not at all.
And, you know, you also look at Gen X women, we have a much different lifestyle than our mothers did.
Radically different.
And and then you add on, that's another rabbit hole if you add on all the toxins and the problems in our food system and that,
Definitely.
we are creating a bit of a perfect storm.
We are.
And if you have an idea and if you have certain things already in play, then you're going to be much much further ahead of the game than us Gen X women. We're blazing another trail here.
I'm Gen X. I think we're
Are
about the
you Gen
same
X too?
age. Yeah, I'm 46.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
I haven't
So
my so far.
you haven't really gone into the any of the
I
hormone things?
have like a little bit of stuff. Like I've definitely my hair's thinning. But my cycles are still relatively regular. I track them now. But one of my good friends has just gone through hell with it. So it's really we talk about it a lot, and that's seeing her experience and what she's doing to get out of it. It's really brought a lot of this. Um,
You may never have.
it won't be. I
Yeah,
mean, it's never the same for anyone. Mine might be
yeah.
really different, but just to know like, wow, like it's this intense for women. And, a lot of, for so long, she just didn't know what was going on. She didn't feel like anyone was hearing her. And I'm glad now, like she's got some tools and we're talking about it. We're finding, literature and things like that together. And I just want for more women to have, yeah, to have the information.
Yeah, I
Seems
mean,
really important.
by the time I was 44, I had chronic insomnia.
Mm, it's rough.
And that went on for, I would try different things. I would try melatonin. I would try, sometimes I would use Gravol. I mean, you were never getting the right sleep. And
Hmm.
then when Canada legalized cannabis, that sort of opened up another realm of options to use too.
Yeah.
But even now, I don't, I take tryptophan to help me stay
Hmm.
asleep at night, which is, for anybody that is not aware of tryptophan, it's an amino acid. It's what's in turkey that makes you sleep.
Turkey. Yeah. Does it help, the tryptophan?
It helps keep me asleep. Yeah.
Oh, that's good to
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I get it as a prescription because otherwise I think it's expensive.
Okay. Yeah, it's good. I mean, yeah, it's always good to
But
save on our healthcare costs where we can.
yeah, definitely. Dr. Alice, as we wrap up today, do you have any final words of wisdom for our listeners?
Yes. I think the biggest thing is to trust yourself. And if you're not sure, that sounds really blanket. So I'm going to make it a little more detailed. To start trusting the signals that your body's giving you and to start learning, what your yes feels like internally and what your no feels like internally. And to start listening when you get those little twinges of this or that, or I need to rest. And to just like let your body be a co-creator in in your world so that it's not, because I think we do a lot of mental overriding. I know I certainly did for years, and it's exhausting. And so just like, as you maybe explore some somatic experiencing or some of the tools we talked about, if you come into your body even a little bit more, just start to trust it. It's on your team. It's like I kind of don't even buy into the mind body connection, because I'm like, we're all this thing. We're all in our bodies, and our brains are part of our bodies, but our nervous system runs throughout our entire body. We're all connected. So I like this idea of coming home to our bodies. So I think, yeah, trust yourself.
That is such important advice. Absolutely. Now, to connect with Dr. Alice, please check out the show notes. I'm going to have all of the links in there. And my goal for the roller coaster of midlife is to empower women like you to thrive in this amazing chapter of our lives. So go on, embrace the adventure, and start rocking midlife like the badass that you are. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend, because our greatest power is in our community. Don't forget to visit my website, therollercoasterpodcast.com, and click on Start Here to get your free audio course, 3 Steps to Go from Hot Mess to Badass and Start Rocking Midlife. Thank you to my listeners for choosing to join us. And Dr. Alice, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom.
Thank you so much for having me.
And until next time, keep riding the roller coaster and embracing the midlife adventure.